We're in America. Say hi, kids. Okay. Okay. We're here. We made it. And now that we're on the ground in America, I feel like I'm on a mission more than ever to learn about church planting and just absorb all that I can from the wisdom around me. So I asked 3 of my friends who are incredible, experienced church planters to share their journey and some of the things that they've learned. Now, this is a slightly longer video than normal, but it is 20 minutes of inspiration and instruction, so there's definitely worse ways to spend your time. And also, it's not just for church planters. If you're in your hometown, if you are spreading the love of Jesus where you live right now, then there is gold and wisdom in this video that you definitely want to check out. So let's learn from some personal heroes of mine as they church plant around the world. And soon, I can't wait to share with you what our first week in America has looked like.
So we've had the privilege of having kind of 3 goes at church planting. The first one was in 2011 in Kampala. We launched our first international church plant. That was a pretty wild ride. 7 adults and 2 kids. That was the entire church plant team. And it happened, it's still running 8 years later, which is huge. I mean, we've learned a lot of lessons along the way. We then had a second stint back out in Kampala. So we did 18 months there the first time, and we did another just over 2 years the second time round. So we had a couple more kids in tow that time. Also, God's goodness in that was that we got to see just how much we'd grown from the first time. And then we ended up in Cape Town more recently. We've been here nearly a year now.
So my church planting journey actually started about 7 years ago, and it's pretty much all I've done since. It's been amazing. It all started when I had finished the Freedom Church Academy, which is a leadership course that we have in our church, and I had this amazing opportunity to go and join our Kampala campus and help serve there. And I made this funny little pact with God during academy that wherever opportunity he had for me, that I would just say yes. So I was 19, I was a Christian for 1 year, and I thought, yeah, I'm gonna go do this. So I packed up everything, I moved out the house for the first time, and I joined the Kampala team and spent a year there building church. And I guess I just got the bug. Joined our Belgium campus with my now husband, and we got to serve the youth and the kids of that city. And it was there that God really started to speak to us about India and about planting a Freedom Church here. So we applied, and to our surprise actually got chosen. And in, I think it was the October of 2015, we were 1 month married, 22 years old, and was heading over to India with a team of 16, and we were going to plant our very first Freedom Church. And we've been here for 4 years, and we're still here, and we absolutely love it. It is the greatest privilege there is, and just absolutely love that we get to be a part of planting church and building church here.
I think one of my biggest tips for church planters would be to remember your call. Remember your call to the city that you're in, the location you're in, the people that you're called to, because at the end of the day, that is going to be the thing that keeps you going when you might feel like you're failing in all other areas. For Josh and I, our church planting journey started with a really big call to a big city, and it was in the really tough moments when people didn't turn up for church, when people said no to our invites, when things just didn't feel like they were going right, that we remembered that we were called to the city, and actually God hadn't said anything different since that point, which meant that we were still called to the city. There were still things we were yet to see, and there were still things that God had for us. And in fact, it's one of the things that we say to people who want to come to our campus, who want to come to our city now. It's that please only come if you're called. We are not in the business of persuading people to come and be with us, because we know that God has specific calls on specific people's lives. So I think in those tough times, remember your calling, remember why you started, remember why, and God will do the rest. My second tip would be, and I have my pointed finger out for this because it's important, have fun. Please, I beg you, if you're watching this and you're a church planter or you're about to be a church planter, please have fun on the journey, because it is fun. It is fun to build a church in a city and reach people and see amazing things that God has for your city and for your own life. In amongst all of the intensity and the important work that we do, God actually calls us to enjoy it as well, to laugh with one another, to not take ourselves too seriously, to enjoy all the good things your city has to offer. It will make your life and your journey so much easier. One of the things that we say to people who come to our city is learn to love the city, because you will find so much more joy in the city if you learn to love it. Every city has their quirks, every city has its problems, but if you actively try and love where you are and have fun where you are, life's going to be just that little bit easier, and it's going to be easier to see the goodness of God in the trials, but also in the celebrations. It's going to be much easier to see. So please, have fun.
Honestly, church planting, it can be tough and it can be challenging. It definitely comes with, a fair share of heartache and disappointments and failure and goodbyes, all of these things, because that's just part of following Jesus. It comes with sacrifice, it comes with a cost. And yeah, we've experienced, a few of those moments over the years, whether it's, missing a funeral of a family member, or missing, the birth of a niece or a nephew. But honestly, we've just really tried to focus on the positive, focused on what we do have, and being grateful for where we get to live and what we get to be a part of. And it's those things that really kind of push us through and help in the hard moments.
So the toughest part, people. I think people make it hard work. I think I make it hard work. I think when I overthink things, when I go down selfish thought patterns and things, if I compare, those things make it really hard. Honestly, when I say people, I'm kind of joking, but really, sometimes you can give people great advice, or you can be praying for someone, contending with someone, and then they go make a silly decision. But hey, that's the same the world over. And you still love people, and you still go again, you still trust again, and you still keep fighting for people, because then the best part is also people, getting to meet people from all over the world, from all walks of life, and getting to know different cultures, different expressions of everything. We've been able to have the privilege of talking to marriages, seeing marriages that were at the point of break point, God restoring them, and babies happening from them as well. Like, God just doesn't just heal, he miraculously redeems as well. So that is definitely the thing that makes it completely worth it. Somebody meeting Jesus from the first time and suddenly getting a hope and a purpose to their life, that makes it really worth it.
The thing that makes church planting all worth it just has to be the life change that you see in people. It's the stories that you experience and you wouldn't experience any other way. I am part of a church that is so many different nationalities, so many different age groups, and has so many different stories of how God has intervened in people's lives and saved them from themselves, has saved them from selfish ambition, has saved them from hopelessness and depression and so many other things. And it's always worth it, even if there's just one person who finds the fullness of God in their lives because of us planting a church in a city. It has to be worth it. because ultimately God cares about people. God cares about the hearts of people, and those are the things that we take with us beyond this life, is the impact that we have on the lives of people. So it's always worth it.
It's the best thing in the world to church plant, to be a part of building God's church, being a part of building the kingdom. It's the best thing ever. And every little bit of life change that we see just makes everything worth it. From, you know, seeing people's lives completely transform, you know, salvation, and, you know, marriages being healed and families growing and new people coming into church and connecting in and absolutely loving it and thriving. You know, the journey that people go on when in academy or going through community, it is absolutely, it's my favourite thing in the world, and it's so good and so encouraging to see and to be a part of. And it's those stories of life change and those stories of redemption that just make every hard day or every visionless day so worth it in the long run. And that's why we do what we do.
Okay, so things I've learned about myself are I can be very selfish, and comparison really does strangle, because honestly, actually, I think what comparison boils down to is when you look at somebody else's walk and say, hey, how come they get to do that? How come they don't have to keep moving house? How come they don't have as many kids? Whereas that's definitely part of the call on our life. Like, if you, as soon as you start doing that, actually what you're doing is coveting other people's walk and other people's journey and other people's call. You're designed perfectly for the call that God puts on you. You are strong enough. If you choose to let him help you, let him guide you, do it in his strength completely. And you never ever stop learning. You never ever stop. One of the campus pastors recently shared a message about the awe and wonder, and that's so what church planting is, the awe and wonder of what God's going to do, especially when times are tough, especially when money's tight or things are going a bit crazy, the creativity that comes within us as well. And God builds his church, and that is incredible. It's enough to inspire any amazing faith.
I think the biggest thing that I've learned about myself over the years is the fact that I can do it, that I really, really can do it. And I know that might sound so simple, but I used to be somebody that was so riddled by fear, so insecure, so shy, didn't think I had much to offer. And for so long it had just capped my potential and just placed such a limit on me. And over the years, you know, through discovering who God is and discovering who he's made me to be, I realised that I really, really can do all things through Christ, that it is so possible for God to do these impossible things through me, and that I can do it, that I can face challenging obstacles, that I can overcome, that I can step out of the boat and see these incredible things happen.
What I've learned about God is, without a shadow of a doubt, he's faithful. He's faithful, and he chooses to use us. He could do it without us. He chooses to use us, and that is an incredible privilege. And he, in his grace, keeps growing us and leading us and loving us in our own weakness. But he is faithful. What he starts, he finishes. And that's incredible too.
I have learned so much about God. I feel like I'm learning something new, you know, every season, every year. You know, he never ever fails to surprise me or challenge my understanding about who he is. But I think the main thing, probably the biggest thing that I've discovered about God and learned about God in my years of church planting and, you know, pursuing different things like adoption and planting in a absolutely foreign and difficult culture, is that God fights for me, and he is consistently, constantly and relentlessly fighting for me. And one of my favourite scriptures is, you know, in Exodus, where it talks about, you know, you only need to be still because God fights for you. He is fighting for you, and he is our advocate. He is our defender. He is our constant. You know, the Holy Spirit is consistently interceding on our behalf. And that gives me so much courage. It really encourages my soul, because on days when honestly I can't fight, and days where I do feel like giving up, I know and I can trust that God is fighting on my behalf, and that He is going before me on these many, many difficult and challenging things. And that is such a source of confidence and empowerment. And I just love that about Him, that He is so relentless and He fights and pursues us relentlessly.
So one of the things that God taught me in my church planting journey is the importance of the kingdom principle of sowing and reaping. A lot of us will know the passage in the Bible that says, look, God can't be mocked. You will reap what you sow. And I think it always reminds me of times where I've gone to God and said, God, why? Why are you not answering me? Why are you ignoring me? And He has come back and said, hey, Meg, it's because you didn't sow anything. You didn't lay any groundwork for these things to come. And so it was particularly highlighted to me in a particularly challenging time when we were building church, maybe about 12 months ago, where we felt like we were doing everything we could to build the church and yet weren't quite seeing what we wanted to see. And God reminded me in that time that actually, even when I felt like I wasn't sowing anything, we were sowing something. And it was hugely encouraging to me, because I remember, you know, I think you get to a place where sometimes you think, is this making any difference? Like, shall I just pack up and go home now? And sometimes I become a little bit dramatic, and I think I might have actually said to one of my leaders at that point, have you got the right person for the job? Because I'm not really doing a great job right now. And I was swiftly told that this was not the case. But it was in that time that God reminded me, actually, even when you feel like what you're sowing isn't important, even when you feel like you're having an off day, you're always sowing something. And in that, then, it means you're always going to reap something. So even if you're sowing loads and loads of invites and nobody comes, you're not just sowing invites to church, you're sowing faithfulness, you're sowing hope, you're sowing trust in God. Even when you are sowing lots and lots of culture and passion, and you're not seeing really any change, you're sowing something. You're sowing faith, you're sowing hope. And sure, there are always going to be times where we can improve what we do and we can do something different, but actually the very action of obeying God and doing what is in His word is sowing something for the future. It was a really important lesson for me in, even when it feels like nothing is happening and nothing is working, we're always sowing something. And because the biblical principle is that when you sow, you reap something, I can trust that God's going to come through for me.
I think, in a nutshell, if you make it about yourself, you'll struggle. If you make it about me and my agenda and my time, if you find yourself using that language a lot, you are going to struggle with, honestly, the weight of it, because it's not about you. Church planting is the opposite of you, or me. It's about, when you make it about loving God and therefore loving others, you will never stop church planting. It will get under your skin. I'm not saying I've nailed it, but the more I do that, the more I make it about the people who are crying out for a church in their location, and God chooses to send us and send me. It's worth packing up. It's worth it, because when they meet God and when they meet Jesus and He transforms their life, when He sets the lonely in family, when He heals, when He provides, when people come alive with vision for the first time in their life, you will never, that's better than any drug, really is.
My advice would be to not go into it half-heartedly. You know, for this to be effective and successful, you have to just really care. You have to care about the people, about the place, about the gospel. You gotta love people, you have to serve people, because church planting, it requires everything. It requires all of you. And you know, some of the most extraordinary church planters that I know and that I have seen are those that give absolutely everything, that they just live relentlessly and they serve consistently and they give all that they are wholeheartedly. And that would be my advice, that would be my encouragement to any church planters. You gotta want it and you gotta love it and you gotta give everything, otherwise don't do it, because it will be a waste of time. So that is what I've seen work and brings the most joy, but also has the most impact on a church plant, as people that are given absolutely everything.